In the first episode of The Residence, the plot is set in motion by the shocking murder of A.B. Wynter, the White House's chief usher. The story begins with a Senate hearing where Jasmine Hannay, who was the assistant usher at the time of the incident, recounts how she learned of Wynter's death. She had been told there had been an incident, but it wasn't until later that she realized the full scope of what had happened. At that point, Jasmine had been preparing to step into the role of chief usher following Wynter's planned retirement. However, to her surprise, she discovers that Wynter had no intentions of retiring anytime soon. Her duties take a sharp turn as she's tasked with informing the staff about the incident while ensuring that no one goes near the crime scene. As the investigation begins, we meet Harry Hollinger, the president's close friend and chief advisor. Hollinger is determined to label the death a suicide in order to avoid any disruption, especially with an important state dinner with Australian representatives looming. He insists on swiftly closing the case. This decision brings us to the introduction of the episode's central character, Cordelia Cupp, a highly respected detective with an unusual hobby, birdwatching. Despite the gravity of the murder case, Cupp indulges in her pastime, taking brief moments to observe birds whenever possible, even amid an ongoing investigation. Cupp is joined by FBI Detective Edwin Park who, for reasons not fully explained, becomes her sidekick. Upon arriving at the White House, Cupp begins her investigation, much to Hollinger's dismay. He continually tries to shut down the case to avoid interfering with the state dinner. Nevertheless, Cupp is not deterred. She examines Wynter's body and quickly notices signs that suggest it was staged to look like a suicide. The slit wrists and the blood stains on his shirt, along with visible cuts on his face, indicate something much more sinister. Her professional opinion is that Wynter was likely poisoned, and she's determined to uncover the truth. Cupp requests a tour of the White House, and Jasmine Hannay takes her around, showing her various rooms, exits, and entrances, as well as providing an estimate of the number of people present, more than 100, including both staff and guests. During the tour, they arrive at Wynter's office, where they find Hollinger going through paperwork, claiming he's searching for sensitive documents. This action is met with skepticism by a Senate member in the present hearing, who points out the absurdity of an usher having access to sensitive political documents. In the office, Cupp discovers a bloody tissue in the trash can, further raising her suspicions. Despite her growing need to interview all the White House staff to piece together the mystery, she faces resistance from officials, who argue that the foreign guests for the state dinner would be disturbed by any further investigation. However, Lily Schumacher, the event coordinator responsible for organizing the dinner, arrives to inform Cupp that the guests are already aware of the incident and are prepared to leave. At this point, a meeting is held between Cupp, a few senior officials, and the president. Cupp proposes locking down the White House to conduct interviews, but the president refuses, citing the importance of the ongoing dinner. As the event continues, Cupp, ever observant, notices something strange through her bird-watching binoculars. One of the Australian representatives is wearing A.B. Wynter's shirt, a discovery that prompts her to revisit the case with renewed urgency. This episode sets the stage for a thrilling investigation filled with twists, character dynamics, and a mix of humor and tension, as Cordelia Cupp is determined to uncover the truth behind A.B. Wynter's murder, no matter the obstacles in her path. In the second episode of The Residence, the story picks up with an eerie scene of a falcon soaring above the White House, silently observing the chaos that's about to unfold. Cordelia Cupp continues her investigation into the murder of A.B. Wynter, starting with a tense interview with David Reliance, an Australian state representative. Cordelia questions David about the shirt he's wearing, which turns out to be Wynter's. David admits to the unusual circumstances. He had been having an affair with Marvella, the White House chef, when he accidentally got a bloody nose. Feeling exposed and uncomfortable, he rushed inside and encountered Wynter, who offered to help. The two swapped shirts, with Wynter cleaning him up and making sure he was presentable for the state dinner. David also reveals a chilling detail about Marvella. She had threatened to kill Wynter after he refused to add a flambe dish to the state dinner menu. Adding to the mystery, David recalls that Wynter had ominously told him, "I am going to be dead by the end of the night." Despite the personal and scandalous nature of his story, Cordelia strikes a deal with David. She promises to keep his secret if he can convince the Australian Prime Minister to pressure the US President into allowing her to conduct interviews with everyone present at the White House, which she believes is key to solving the murder. Once Cordelia is granted the interviews, the web of secrets and tensions within the White House begins to unravel. A carpenter recalls a strange encounter earlier that day, where he overheard Wynter yelling and threatening to reveal the truth to someone. The carpenter also mentions seeing Harry Hollinger, the president's chief advisor, leaving a music performance and passing by Wynter's office in a manner that seemed suspicious. These snippets of information begin to form a larger picture of intrigue and hidden conflicts within the White House. Further interviews expose even more complicated relationships between the staff. We learn of Tripp's intense hatred for his brother, the strained relationship between Elliot and his mother, who despises President Parry, and the chaotic environment surrounding the state dinner. From food issues to last-minute cancellations, it becomes clear that the evening was full of tension. Meanwhile, the staff is forced to keep the guests entertained while waiting their turn for interviews, creating a sense of disorder and confusion. Cordelia's investigation takes an interesting turn when she discovers that the last call made to Wynter's office had come from the grounds cruise room, specifically from Emily, the gardener. Intrigued, Cordelia inspects the area and finds a piece of broken glass. At that moment, something clicks in her mind. She requests that Wynter's body be taken out through the front entrance rather than the back, hoping to gather everyone in one place and observe their reactions. This move is strategic, as Cordelia believes it will reveal more than they might realize. What follows is a rapid sequence of discoveries. Cordelia spots a cook, and through flashbacks, we see the cook staging Wynter's body, slashing his wrists with a kitchen knife before the body is discovered. This revelation is a key moment in the investigation, as it paints a clearer picture of how the crime was committed and who might be involved. The episode deepens the mystery, showing the complex network of relationships and motives at play within the White House, while Cordelia Cupp remains relentless in her pursuit of the truth. With each clue uncovered, the tension rises, and the stakes of the investigation grow ever higher. Episode 3 of The Residence opens with a tense scene of Didier, the pastry chef, cleaning a knife stained with blood and disposing of it, along with a cloth, in the incinerator. Edwin, ever eager to jump to conclusions, immediately suspects Didier of involvement in the murder of A.B. Wynter. However, Cordelia Cupp, as always, offers a reminder through one of her signature bird analogies, that things aren't always what they appear to be, urging a more careful consideration of the situation. As the investigation unfolds, more interviews reveal just how chaotic the state dinner had been. Lily Schumacher, the White House social secretary, had been consulting an energy medium, and together, they made the controversial decision to replace Didier's beloved Christmas gingerbread house with a wellness showcase, much to Didier's disappointment. Though he was unhappy with this decision, Didier never voiced his opposition, as Wynter, the chief usher, failed to protect him and his creative contributions. Later, during the dinner, Didier attempted to showcase his desserts, including a cheeky kangaroo design, but Wynter once again shut him down, adding to the tension between the two. Through Jasmine Hannay, the assistant usher, we learn more about the critical role of the chief usher, which involves managing the White House and protecting staff from external pressures. With this in mind, Cordelia and Edwin begin to consider the possibility that Didier may have had a motive for revenge against Wynter for his repeated failures to defend Didier's work. This theory gains further weight when a gingerbread man resembling Wynter, complete with a knife stuck in it, appears, seemingly implicating Didier further. The detectives soon focus their attention on Didier himself, bringing him in for questioning about his presence in the game room, where Wynter's body was discovered. A blue stain on Didier's shirt links him to the crime scene. Meanwhile, another staff member, Sheila, mentions seeing Didier heading toward the basement, which only deepens the suspicion surrounding him. The investigation takes another turn when the detectives discover that Didier had attempted to dispose of evidence, the knife and the cloth, in the incinerator, only to find out that the incinerator wasn't working, rendering his attempt useless. Finally, Didier breaks his silence and offers a different explanation for his actions. he confesses that he has an office on the third floor where he keeps his expensive knives to keep them secure. When he went to the office, he discovered Wynter's body in the game room, with one of his knives beside it. Having had a public argument with Wynter earlier, Didier panicked, fearing he would be blamed for the murder. In his panic, he took the knife, cleaned it, and tried to dispose of it in the incinerator to cover his tracks. The focus of the investigation then shifts to the gardening staff, as the call to Wynter had been traced to the room used by the grounds crew. Cordelia and Evan meet the chief gardener, who shows them around the room. However, Cordelia quickly assesses the situation and concludes that the gardener isn't one of the suspects. Nevertheless, she does discover that someone unfamiliar had been in the room before, someone who clearly didn't belong there. Throughout the episode, Evan remains steadfast in his belief that Didier is the murderer, but Cordelia continues to follow her instincts. Earlier in the investigation, Cordelia had asked the chief gardener about a leaf she had found in Wynter's room, which led the two detectives to a nearby tree. While searching the area, Cordelia finds a discarded cigarette on the ground, which immediately catches her attention. The mystery deepens as the detectives confront Sheila, the butler who had been mentioned in previous interviews. Sheila admits that the cigarette found near the tree belongs to her. The episode ends on an ominous note, with the camera focusing on someone sticking a knife into the gingerbread figure of Wynter, suggesting that there's still more to uncover about the people involved in his death and the tangled web of secrets surrounding the White House. As the investigation unfolds, Cordelia's sharp observations and methodical approach continue to reveal more pieces of the puzzle, leaving viewers eager to see how the mystery will be resolved. Episode 4 of The Residence begins with Cordelia taking her nephew on a bird-watching trip. However, the trip quickly loses its charm for him as they struggle to spot any birds. During this quiet moment, he reveals that his mother, Cordelia's sister, thinks Cordelia is obsessive and uncooperative. In response, Cordelia shares a story about how her nephew's mother once lost her favorite sock, and how Cordelia's obsessive and persistent nature helped find it. It had been taken by the neighbor's dog during a visit. Inspired by this story, her nephew becomes more patient and interested in birdwatching the next morning, marking a subtle but touching moment of connection. The focus then shifts to Sheila, the butler, who has become a central figure in the investigation. Several staff members have described her as a heavy drinker, though Sheila herself attempts to downplay this aspect of her personality. She tells Cordelia that she had a shot of vodka in the game room before delivering the bottle to Mrs. Cox, the president's mother-in-law. Through various interviews, Cordelia and Evan learn more about the disastrous state dinner. Lily Schumacher's poor planning left numerous empty seats, causing embarrassment. As a result, Sheila was seated next to the former First Lady, an old friend of hers. However, this did not sit well with Wynter, who was furious about the seating arrangement and publicly scolded Sheila. Feeling threatened, Sheila expressed her dislike for Wynter, which further complicates her involvement in the case. As the investigation progresses, it's revealed that Sheila went upstairs to deliver a bottle of vodka to Mrs. Cox but, in a drunken stupor, ended up drinking the entire bottle in the game room instead. This explains the presence of a glass in the room. Sheila later went to fetch another bottle but never delivered it, as Jasmine had warned her to stay off the third floor after Wynter's body was discovered. Cordelia, ever the methodical investigator, pieces together Sheila's fragmented and evasive story. She confronts Sheila with the facts, making it clear that she can no longer lie. Sheila finally admits that after leaving the game room, heavily intoxicated, she saw someone on the third floor, but she was too drunk to identify them. Additionally, while smoking near a tree, which Cordelia had previously noted was connected to the leaf found in the game room, Sheila saw someone other than the Australian representative and the chef enter the garden supply room. This new information adds more layers to the mystery, suggesting that multiple people might have been involved. Meanwhile, Cordelia and Evan receive preliminary autopsy results that shed new light on Wynter's death. It is revealed that Wynter died after being struck on the head with a blunt, heavy object, and he had already been dead for at least 30 minutes before his body was discovered. Interestingly, his wrists had been cut post-mortem, and traces of poison were also found in his system, confirming that he had been poisoned before his death. Convinced that Wynter's body had been moved, Cordelia intensifies her investigation. She inspects the third floor, where she uncovers a room supposedly undergoing renovation. However, after speaking with other staff members, she learns that the renovation is a ruse, designed to keep guests from staying overnight in that particular room. Returning to the room with Jasmine, Cordelia scratches off some of the wall paint and uncovers dried blood beneath, confirming that something sinister occurred in that room. The episode ends on this chilling discovery, deepening the mystery and leaving viewers eager to see how Cordelia will unravel the web of secrets surrounding Wynter's death. With each clue, the tension rises, and the investigation becomes ever more complex, drawing Cordelia closer to uncovering the truth.